Okay, had some technical difficulties with the stream, but now I think it's all working. Ah. Into that camera. All right, well, we will see. We'll wait a little bit here and see who shows up. I think I messed up the announcement. I said that it was 9:30, and I set it for 9:30 in the little event there, and but I think I typed 9, so we'll see what happens. Should have brought a drink with me. Let's point the camera towards something more interesting than me. Is anybody there? Just type something. Shows that there's 4 people, 5 people. Just type something so I know that you're there. What the hell is this? No, this is fun. That's really saturated. Let's go with, ooh. $45, $45. $45. Oh. Is anyone there? See you guys coming and going. Say something. Hey, there we go. AR Blake. Good to see you. What was I doing here? I had some minor technical difficulties getting the stream going, but it's working now. It's a little saturated though. Well, I didn't really have an agenda for this. Thank you. Thank you. If there's anything specific you have questions on. So the Ruger, I'll come over there with it. That's why I had this on cord. But the Ruger precision rifle is newish. I haven't had a chance to shoot it, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I will say it came with a brake on here. Like I don't know what I did with it. I think I have it somewhere. But it had a jam nut on it, and it was really kind of a pain to get off of there, so that I could put underneath here is basically one of these. And this is a Spec War 7.62, obviously. It's kind of a pain though, because I've got one on here. I've got one on here, and then on this little guy here. They're like $85, $90 a piece, and then you got to time them with the, with the washers and stuff. It's kind of a pain. So that is that. Stash this somewhere. Glass is it's a Vortex 5x20 HD, and it's a Gen 1 because the Gen 1 is cheaper, but it's pretty good. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to shoot it, but it's got nice adjustments. I am going to have to, I just briefly kind of tried to bore sight this the other day, and I'm all the way down here, and I'm still like 6 inches high at like 25 yards. So I'm going to have to take this turret off and see if there's like any kind of stop on the bottom that's preventing it from going lower than that. It looks like I should be able to go lower than that. The only other issue I was thinking is this is a 20 MOA rail on the gun already, and then I think this is another 20 right there. So, I've got a little bit of room here. It's not quite as close to the rail as I'd like, but I really like these LaRue mounts. Here's another one here. They're pricey, but you get what you pay for. So 22R precision. I don't know that I would call this one precision. This is just the Savage. I think that's a 22-inch barrel with like a cheesy Zeiss scope on it. I honestly haven't tried to shoot that you know, at any type of accuracy. It's kind of just something I would shoot steel with and stuff. I haven't really actually spent a whole lot of time with it, but. Oh, you're talking about the 22 version of the Ruger. Got it. Yeah, I just saw that the other day. It's an interesting idea. How much are they? That's not bad. Yeah, I mean this is chambered in 308. I didn't go 6.5 Creedmoor. I know it's a popular an option is people doing 6.5. The reason I went with 308 is because A, it's cheaper to shoot. I'm going to reload, obviously, and I already have the 308 projectiles, you know, for blackout and stuff like that. So, you know, I'll just reload some of these. And if I don't use them for 308, I can use them for blackout. These are 168 grains. Yeah, I had a video. Let's see what you got. Oh, the USP. So I don't know how much of my videos you guys watch, but the USP, I was complaining about how when I moved, I put the barrel, so I packed it away somewhere. So I had everything but the gun and I couldn't find the barrel and I was mad about it. I haven't found also the A3 stock, the 3-position A3 stock for my MP5. Haven't found that, but I did find the barrel the other day. So I will be able to actually shoot this guy. I run 7.62. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 7.62 stuff, that's kind of my game, is I just go with stuff that's going to be easy to get, right? Just typical NATO calibers, anything that's fielded by the military. There's going to be plenty of ammo and or brass and reloading components, right? 300 Win Mag would be another choice of mine. 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.8 SPC. You get into some of those weird calibers, you know, you're pretty limited there. So interesting thing about this gun, this is the USP 45 Tactical. Yeah, you can see it there on the slide. So I bought this gun years ago. It's a KK date code, which I don't remember what year that is. It's an older model. This one has the HK logo actually etched in the, or engraved, I guess. Engraved is the right word, on the slide, versus the other one. This is the USP SD. You'll see that it's actually just the laser etching. Somewhere along the lines they switched, I think, just because it was cheaper to etch it than to etch it than it was to engrave it. So anyways, I bought this one on HK Pro. If you look in like the classified section or whatever, people will sell these specifically, the HK 45 Tacticals. You can get them for like a steal. I think this whole gun was like $700 and it came with the zippered case and like 2 magazines. It only came with the 10-round mags, but still, like, you know, you get the match trigger, you get, you know, 45, obviously. And I mean, this is one of the best. This was actually the first gun, the first HK I ever shot that got me off Glocks. Because I was like, you know, I had a Glock 21 and I was like, okay, yeah, this was the only thing I knew, which is still a good gun. Mine was actually the 21C, which has the ports cut in the top to mitigate the recoil, and it actually did work. So that was a cool gun. And then a friend of a friend had this gun, and I was like, yeah, let me shoot that. And then once I, you know, shot a hammer fired like match trigger, I was like, man, that's an awesome gun. So that's when I kind of got into the HK game. I actually haven't shot this gun much at all because in 45, I have the Mark 23, which is kind of in a whole different class, you know. I've done plenty of videos on kind of both of these guns, but whenever I go to shoot 45 in a handgun, I always end up shooting this guy. So it's a bit, you know, by the time you got the slide locked back, it's Let's see what we got here with the suppressor. 19 inches. So just think about that. That's longer than an AR-15 barrel. 19 inches, almost exactly. A little more if you count the back part of the slide here. Interesting nonetheless. The only thing I don't like about this gun, and this is kind of what I don't like about the SIGs. I mean, I like SIGs, but being a lefty is having this decocker only on this side. It's like I can't really even use it unless I do one of these, which, you know, is not really feasible versus these USPs, which have the levers on both sides. Which, yeah, Mark 23. Which gun are you talking about? The reliability. I mean, both of these are solid guns. I will say I did have, between the two, which I've shot the Mark 23 more, I did have a couple failure to feeds with some Golden Sabers, just the jacketed hollow points. Don't know why. I've read some various things about that specific gun that, of course, you know, the history behind it is kind of extensive. It was for SOCOM and all this kind of stuff. And in the manual, it states that it's, I think, cited for 185 grain. I don't know if it said jacketed hollow points or not. But then on the other hand, because of the Geneva Convention, if it's a military gun, you would assume that they're shooting ball ammo. So there's kind of like a debate over people like, well, you know, it's meant for ball ammo because it's a you know, like a military gun. So if you get failures to feed with hollow points, then that's not really the gun's fault because it wasn't designed for that. But kind of curious now to look at the feed ramps and see if they're any different between the two. Actually, well, it's hard to tell because the Mark 23 is dirtier, but there is a difference on the feed ramps. I don't think I'll be able to show this on camera. Let me try and clean it real quick. This is one of the most valuable tools I have in this workshop is Q-tips. If I could choose one, what would it be? I'll say this. I bought the Mark 23 first when I didn't really know what it was, as bad as that sounds. All right, let's see if I can show this here. So let's see. This is the Mark 23, right here. That's the Mark 23. So, and then that's the USP. So you see there is a slight difference. Kind of looks like the USP has a more pronounced feed ramp there. So kind of interesting there. Yeah, I mean, they're both solid guns. They're going to be just as good as anything money can buy. If I could choose one, what would it be? So it depends. I would say it depends strictly on budget. These, you know, minus the suppressor, just gun alone, are around $2,000. You know, you can get them for $1,800, maybe used. You could pick one up for $1,700, but that's a lot of money, right? And then, like I said, you can get this for, you know, $600-700. So are you getting twice the gun with the Mark 23? No, this is still an amazing gun. So it kind of depends on your budget, because you figure for, let's call it $1,900. If you had $1,900 to spend on gun stuff, be it one gun or multiple guns, you could get one of these, get a light, extra mags, ammo. You could get a lot more stuff for your money. So that's what I would say. But if money's no object, yeah, definitely get the Mark 23. It's a significant difference shooting those two guns. RMR on your HKs. No. If you want to do a setup like that, I would do the FN, the FNX Tactical, because it's already milled out for that. It's got a nice little slide plate. The danger that you run into, it's kind of twofold. If you want to do that on the HKs, is one, you're going to have to get somebody to mill off the material, drill the holes, tap them, all that kind of stuff. It's not going to be cheap. So one, it may affect the function of the gun a little bit, because remember, these things are balanced in a certain way to cycle and all that. I think you'd be okay there. It's when you do stuff like that and, cut serrations into it, mill holes in the top. That's when you kind of get into, you're messing with the design of the gun and the balance of the gun too much. But it also affects the resale value. Like, I could sell these guns like that for, a good price, right? Not exactly what I paid for them because they're used, but I always tell people, if you buy high-end guns, it's kind of like jewelry. Like, for the most part, they hold their value, as long as you don't, beat them up and shoot them to death. So that's kind of my advice on that. Do you like the HK45 as much as the USP45? No, I don't. I like the ergonomics of it, kind of like I have a P30. The ergonomics are there, right? I didn't like the trigger, and I didn't like I got so used to the taller sights on like the tactical models and the Mark 23 that it was just a little too different for my taste. Not to say it's not a good gun. I mean, it's an awesome gun. It's just, after I've shot the USP, that was the thing. I got the P30 thinking, okay, I like the USP, but it's a little dated. Like, it doesn't have the Picatinny rail. You have to put an adapter to get that. Like, the grip's not as good as obviously these ones where you can swap out different pieces, make them bigger and change the textures and stuff like that. So I got the P30, and I didn't bring it. It's still in the house, but I didn't like it as much. I got it in LEM, and it didn't do it for me because I was so used to the USP. Glock 19. I mean, a Glock 19, that was my carry gun for the longest time. It's a great gun. I think it's the most popular gun on earth, right? Glock 19, Glock 17. I ended up switching to the USP for my carry gun, the stainless 45 one, because, I was spending so much time at the range, getting so much trigger time on USPs. My hands were getting used to, the safety and decock levers, stuff like that. I was like, it doesn't make sense for me to carry a gun that I don't shoot as much. So that was kind of my logic behind that. Anything else you guys want to see particularly? I'll go back to the wall there. I said that I was going to get all my guns out, and it just ended up being trickier than I thought because I didn't have enough. I'll just hold it. Oh, MP5. I didn't have enough hooks. So the MP5, yeah, let's talk about that gun. Find a place to put this. Okay. So, I don't know, there's a lot of talk about these being dated and whatever, but this is still one of my all-time favorite guns. I like it better than the UMP. I got the UMP first, and then I bought this. This is the Surefire Light. So it's got the, right here where you can tap it kind of anywhere along the line, or on the other side, you've got the tacky switches here. It's only 100 lumen light, but it's good enough. It has a really, let's see if you can see it on the, it has a really narrow spill, which is good if I wanted to use this like indoors. You know, how hard is it? Oh yeah. So the expert is a weird one, because the expert is the only HK gun that has, I'll get to the UMP in a second. The Expert's the only HK gun that has the rear of it milled lower. So it's not actually the same sights that you'll see on, say, this one. This portion is actually lower. So there's only, I think, one or two. I think Dawson Precision used to make, and I think they're discontinued. They used to make a set of sights specifically like with the lower or the rear and front matched, so that you get you know, the right zero there with the Expert. So not a lot of options for that. Okay, so the UMP, again, this, for those of you that don't know, or the, I don't know how many people are watching, 2 of you or the 3 of you. I bought this as a USC, which is kind of an ugly looking thing. And I kind of got in on the tail end of this. I think it was $1,500 for the USC, which basically gets you this receiver. And then it's got like some one-piece thing with a thumb hole stock, and it's ugly and kind of not near as much fun as this, right? So you pay that. You're going to use the receiver and the bolts in here, and that's about it. So you take that, you get a UMP, an actual UMP lower, which this came with like the full auto internals and stuff when I bought it. And then you take that stuff out. You put the USC internals in it, and then there's a spot in here where the full auto components were. It's filled in with like some kind of polymer. There's a guy that specializes in doing this. His name's Tommy Bostic, so that's who I sent the receiver to. He makes these cuts, like these vents don't exist in the USC, so he has like a jig to, you know, cut all this. The mag well has to be cut out, stuff like that. And then, you know, you attach the stock with this block, and there's a couple different ways. You can actually buy a demilled like rear section of a real UMP that already has this hinge on it. And then it has to actually be plastic welded to the receiver, which again, Tommy Bostic's one of the only guys that does that, or at least does it well. It's a lot more expensive to do that. The only thing I wish I would have had him do is he will do a thing where he builds on like a little stock hook here, which the real UMP will have that. It'll have like this little plastic hook here, so that when you fold the stock, it actually catches there and stays in place. And then you know, because mine just kind of flops around, see? So that's kind of the only thing I wish I would have done when I got it. But again, I did this one first. I did the UMP first, and then you just don't see UMPs. Yeah. I did that one first, and then I got the MP5 later. But yeah, the UMP is a weird one because not a lot of people know what it is. You know, I've taken it to some indoor ranges, and like I've noticed, you know, younger people play video games are like, oh, he's got a UMP 45. But, you know, I've taken it to like some outdoor ranges, shooting at a rifle range. People are like, what is that? So, you know, it's one of those things. So I have shot that to 100 yards with what, I've got an aim point on it. And I mean, it's doable, but the trigger on that, I measured it with the pull gauge, which maxes out at 12 pounds, and it's over the pull weight. So I know it's over 12 pounds. If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably closer to like 15, 16 pounds. Like, it's a heavy, feels like a staple gun. It's got, you can shoot it fast. Like, it's got a good reset on it, but it's not like a target gun by any means or something that's meant to be, you know, shot past. I mean, 100 is like, I could do it, but it was a lot of work to kind of keep that thing on target while you're, you know, doing that heavy trigger pull. MP5, totally different story. I can easily shoot that out to 100 yards, just ding, 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 ding all day. Any guns you're looking to get in the future? Yeah, so I've been trying to get into long range, which is where this guy comes in. I want to get something in 300 Win Mag. I was probably, gosh, this camera. I was thinking of doing a Savage. It's a 110 BA in 300 Win Mag. I think it's like a 26-inch barrel. I looked at a Barrett, but they're just real expensive. So you figure by the time, you know, you buy the glass, which is as much or more than the rifle. So it gets expensive. I mean, not that, you know, any of these guns are cheap or even that one. But, you know, once you start putting the expensive glass, this guy, actually Monday, I'm getting the, what is it? The Primary Arms Platinum 1-8. I'm excited about that. That's going to go in this LaRue mount. 34 millimeter tube. It's going to be heavy, but this gun I've kind of been using as like a DMR. I used to use it for like run and gun stuff up close, shooting steel, but I've switched actually to using this 10.5 for that. It's much easier. But that's actually a 14.5-inch barrel, which makes a big difference. This is 16. This is 14.5. So this lower is actually a Form 1 lower. I can put, you know, a short barrel. I think I registered them down to like 7.5. Same thing with this. This is a different lower. So I have two SBR lowers. I don't do the whole brace thing or whatever. Oh, the SR20. I didn't even know they made it in 6.5 Creedmoor. So the SR25, yeah, is an awesome gun, but I've gone back and forth numerous times on that. I've looked at that before, and I was like, man, I want to get an SR25, like a 20-inch barrel or an 18-inch barrel. They've got a couple different variants. With the Creedmoor, it might be longer, but I mean, they're expensive. And I'm in Florida. Like, Knights is not too far away. At one point, it's probably about 45 minutes, an hour away drive from where I live. And at one point, a recruiter contacted me about a job there. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, that would be awesome. Like, if I could work for Knights Armament, I'm like, you know, we would have to move, but, you know, and it's like Titusville is not, it's different. I'll just say that. But yeah, they make great stuff, but when you look at it, A, they're real expensive, and B, like, the warranty sucks. Like, I think it was a 1 or a 2 year warranty, and those are like, they want $4,000 for those things now. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I agree. They are too expensive. Like, even just like, what are they? The SR15 is, you know, $2,700. I actually looked when I was buying, when I bought this is Blackout, 300 Blackout. And when I bought this lower, there was a place that was selling just the Knights, you know, complete lowers and stuff, came with a stock and trigger and all that. And they were like, I don't know, $700 or $800. I'm like, you got to be kidding. Like, you know, this is Voltor, and I've got, well, I don't have the Geisley trigger in that, but I have it in the other ones. Like, you can get the best of the best, put it together yourself, and I just don't see the Knights. I just don't see the value there. Yeah, just the upper is $1,600. Like, crazy, man. I mean, granted, this upper was not cheap. The Noveske one with the switch block, it's the stainless barrel, not cheap. But again, I'm getting some kind of features there that you're not getting out of the run of the mill, you know, one that's $1,600. This one I haven't really shown. There's some videos of me shooting it, but that's the Saiga 12, which is an interesting gun. I don't know where the magazine takes, you know, big long magazine. They have a drum for it and stuff. I'm not big on shotguns. I have a Remington 870 too, but well, it's not as much fun as some of the other stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've debated several times, like, oh man, I want to get like the Benelli M4, and I'm like, you know what am I going to do with that? Like, I'm going to buy it, and then I'm not going to shoot it. It's just going to sit around, take up space on the safe, which is basically what that one's doing. The thing I like about this one, though, is it was an aftermarket option, but there's a piston in here that, I'll take it down. This is kind of cool. It's heavy. But there's a piston here. See that? You hear it click? And so you can adjust it to, you know, you're basically adjusting the gas like any piston gun. So I can, you know, depending on what kind of loads, like I can adjust it where it's putting the most gas out if I'm shooting like some bird shot. You know, I got a good deal on like some, I don't remember what it was, something, the real small pellet stuff. What was it, number 9 shot, I think. And it wouldn't cycle unless I adjusted that piston down. Tromix, yeah. So I considered that, but the Tromix stuff is cool, right? So if you don't know, Tromix is a company you send the Saiga 12 to. They do like, well, I guess they're called SBSs, right? Short barrel shotguns. They'll cut the barrel down. They have like their own special stocks, and they have just like these really cool, like almost medieval looking renditions. But it's expensive. It's like, I don't know. I think that gun, I don't remember what I paid for that gun. I think it was like $800. They were like, you could get them for $500 at one point. And then they, you know, were I think around almost $1,000. They don't import them anymore. The Ismith, Obama put the kibosh on the Ismith stuff. But yeah, the Tromix stuff, it was like $1,200 or more to, you know, depending on what you wanted to do. But the killer was like, okay, yeah, send us your gun. You'll get on the list and you'll get it back in like a year. I'm thinking a year, like that's crazy. MR 556 or 762? No, those are again. We're getting into Knights Armament territory with that. I remember when the MR 556 was like, I want to say it was like as cheap as like $1,200, or, you know, I definitely remember when it was $1,600, and then all of a sudden, like, they just shot up, and they, you know, they were like $2,500. I think the MR 556, similar to like the ACR, it's got a real heavy barrel. And so a lot of guys, if they want to run that like in 3-gun or just in general, will take it somewhere, put it on a lathe, actually shave down that barrel profile, save some weight on it. The 7.62, I mean, yeah, it's an awesome gun, but it's real expensive. And, you know, yeah, it's probably heavy, but I think I could live with that. You're really not going to run and gun with that one like you would with the 5.56 version. What was I going to say about it? I kind of wish, I think it only comes in a 16-inch barrel. I would probably want that. 18 is kind of optimal for 308 in that kind of setup. So Brian asked, 416. So yeah, the 416, that's kind of one of those things. It's almost like a novelty that commands like an insane price. If you look on HK Pro, there's guys that are like diehard into this stuff. And, somebody would get like, oh, this is a true 416 upper, all the right markings. And it would sell for some insane price, like $4,000 just for the upper, because it's all, the original stuff, the numbers match, it's got all the right markings. Like, I don't see the value in it really. I mean, it's not going to shoot really any better than this. This is a 10.5-inch Noveske stainless match barrel. I've shot this out to 300 yards with an EOTech, just ringing the thing every time. Again, it kind of depends on the shooter, but at some point, like, diminishing returns, guys. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like the HK stuff, I mean, it's cool. I mean, I'm kind of still on the HK bandwagon, but I don't know, man. Like that MP5 setup, right? To get to this point, with the light, let's just say the whole shebang. If you wanted to duplicate this exact gun with the light, say the Form 1, so you can have the short barrel, the stock, the aim point, this mount, all this stuff. I mean, this is like, I don't know, $3,500 probably by the time you're said and done. So, if you're a police department and you say to HK, like, I want this full auto, pretty much the same exact setup, they're like $900. So, a lot of it is because of some of these stupid gun laws. Like they can't, if it's a rifle, it has to be manufactured here, or it has to have a certain number of US made parts. And, you get into all that stupid stuff that doesn't. HK33 SP. So HK33, I think that's, what caliber is that? I think that's still 5.56, right? The ones that get me, I think it's the 53. That's like a 10-inch barrel, and it's a 7.62. Yeah, 5.56. 7.62 is just insane. I've shot there's a video of me doing it. The Black Rifle Arms guy. I think it was a 12-inch 308, but it was full auto, and I couldn't get more than 3 or 4 rounds out of the thing before it was completely off target. And then actually, when I did connect, get 2 or 3 shots on target, it actually knocked the target over because of just the amount of energy coming out of that 308. Last gun all the time, G3. Never heard one. I was shooting outdoors with at the rifle range where I go, and there was a guy that came up and set up next to me that was shooting a 300 Win Mag with a muzzle brake on it. That was one of the loudest guns I've ever heard. Let's see, what else can we talk about? You guys got any other questions, comments, things you want to see, hear me talk about? I don't know. I will talk about, I got a couple things I'll bring up, but I don't know what's going to happen with this whole, the YouTube stuff, right? Because I think the majority of my channel is reloading, right? And now they're saying you can't have any reloading videos. I went on there the other day and looked at all my videos because, I mean, I don't make a lot of money from this, but it was, a nice little, deposit here, deposit there kind of thing. And then all of a sudden it just like dropped completely off. And then I went and looked, and it's like half of the stuff they demonetized, which I had heard about. And I just didn't really look into it. It's kind of stupid. And there's no rhyme or there's kind of no method to it, right? If I look at what they censored versus what they didn't censor, or what they didn't demonetize, it's like, how do you do, there's two videos that have content about suppressors. One they demonetized and one they didn't. Like, what? I don't know. It's sad. Curious about that. Yeah, so the Florida gun laws, that's interesting, right? So, obviously I'm over 21 and I have a concealed weapons permit. It doesn't affect me. I don't have a bump stock. I never liked those things. I remember when those came out, and I said this to several people. I'm like, somebody's going to go shoot up something with one of those things, and then it's going to be a big deal. And we've come there, right? So the law is very vague. Like it says rate increasing devices, right? So, they say, oh yeah, people have gotten, convicted over these vague gun laws, but it's like, how do you enforce that? Like, okay, yeah, they said bump stock specifically. Okay. I could see that, but like, what defines a rate limiting device and what rate are they talking about? Like, technically Jerry Michalik, who can, shoot a mil-spec trigger faster than anybody on the planet. Like, how would that apply to him? Because I had aftermarket triggers in all my ARs. This is a Geisley. This is a Geisley. This is a LaRue MBT. Not as good as the Geisley, but it's a little bit cheaper. It's good for what you get. Good for what you pay, I guess. So I did do a detail strip on this guy. This is a USP. Yeah, aftermarket triggers. I don't know, man. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. So this particular gun, 9mm, right? USP SD, basically the same as the tactical here. Just for whatever reason, they don't put the tactical on the slide on the 9. Doesn't come with a match trigger. Kind of strange, but this is kind of like my go-to gun. I've shot, 10,000 rounds through this, probably more. So I did a detail strip of this. I could tell just that, how the trigger feels when I dry fire it. I'm like, this thing's just, it didn't, the safety lever and decock lever felt gummy. So I actually just took the whole thing apart and cleaned it. So I was using this, just gun scrubber, right? And I just sprayed it in the top here, soaked the parts in it, brushed them off with a metal brush, cleaned it, and it was pretty dirty. So then I never emptied the excess cleaner out of the top. So it actually, it just dried up in there. Like I came in here today and it kind of just, I guess the liquid evaporated, but that was all basically the gunk that was in the internals. And it is a night and day difference after that. Let's see, what else? I talked about doing some giveaways, right? So since you guys are here, I've got several things. I've got the hand press here, which I'll have to find all the parts that go with it. But this was kind of the first thing that I ever started reloading with. It's good for like pistol rounds, I would say. You could do rifle rounds on this, but it's going to be kind of a pain. So I was going to give this away with 45 ACP dies, some cases, throw in some projectiles and all that. So anybody interested in that? Some people like to reload, some people don't. Let me know if any of you guys are interested in it. And I'll just send it out. What else did I come up with? I've got a couple mil-spec AR-15 triggers. And what else did I have? I'm from too far. Oh, are you in outside the U.S.? Prep show. You know, speaking of gun laws, like it's interesting because I, work with a lot of different people from all different parts of the world, right? So I'll ask them like, "Hey, what are the gun laws like in Venezuela?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, there aren't any. Like, if you get a gun, then it's just what it is." Poland, wow. Or like a guy from India. I'm like, "Suresh, what are the gun laws like in India?" He's like, "It's very restrictive." My neighbor is actually Brazilian, so I'm interested to ask him because there's something going on right now. I guess the violence is so bad they're actually considering like a Second Amendment concealed carry kind of thing, just because I guess nothing they've tried has worked, and like just the violence is so bad they might as well just let people arm themselves. I'm in Fairhope, Alabama. Is that right? AL's Alabama. I'm in Orlando, Florida here. If you didn't know. Actually, the Pulse shooting is probably about, I don't know, Pulse is right downtown, like 15 minutes away. And it's kind of interesting because I was working with Orange County government at the time. Like, I was never a government employee or anything like that, but the type of work I do, I kind of bounce around, do consulting and stuff like that. And I had started working on a project there like the week before the Pulse thing happened. And my wife, would that happen on like a Friday night or something? My wife's like, "Oh, there was some terrorist attack downtown." And I was like, "What are you talking about? There's no terrorist attack downtown. Like, we would have heard about that." And I go and look at the news and I'm like, "Oh my God." I was like, she's right. It said like, 46 people dead or something like that. And I was like, whoa. So it's actually interesting because, working with the county there, when I went in on Monday and was talking to the guys, and it's funny because the local county there is like, the guys that work there were all older, like conservative guys that were into guns. Like, I would get there and we would talk about reloading and ballistics and shooting for like, a couple hours in the morning, screwing around. Like, the boss of the guys would come in. He's like, "What are you guys doing? Looking at guns again?" So we kind of talked about that. And I was like, I didn't know anything about how that stuff worked. And I was like, there's obviously a county morgue where they take the bodies and stuff. Pretty much any murders or anything that happens, they have to go to the county morgue, and they do an autopsy, stuff like that. So I said, "How does that work? Because if there's that many people, like, are they equipped to handle that volume of like just dead bodies?" And they're like, "Actually, yeah, because we have Disney here. They had built a new morgue, I don't know, 5 or 10 years before that or something. So like, it's a fairly new morgue, and they spec'd it large enough that like, if there was a terrorist attack at Disney, that they could handle it." So it's crazy stuff. Let's see. In Europe, it's the same problems with gun laws like in the US right now. Left side. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, in the States here, there's you kind of go through all different areas. Like Florida, is pretty, with the exception of those new laws that they signed in, which surprised me. We're a pretty like gun free, or, like a gun friendly state. Obviously we can have suppressors, machine guns, short barreled rifles. If you apply for a concealed weapons permit and you are not a felon or anything like that, like they will issue you the permit and stuff like that. You can carry a gun in your car without a permit. There's some stipulations to that. Like, this is some 3-step thing. Like, it has to be like in an encased thing. Like, it could be in the glove box, but like it can't be loaded. So it has to be 3 steps. Like, you have to open the glove box, get it out, then load it. That would be like the 3 steps kind of thing. But yeah, man, you go to like Hawaii, California, New York, it's like a big deal. And it's interesting because like from a cultural standpoint, like in Florida here, you know, like I said, everybody's got guns. Like my daughter sees me with this stuff. She doesn't think anything of it. You know, it's just one of those things. But you go to like New York or California and you start to talk to people who grew up in those things. And it's like, it's a big thing. Like, oh no, guns, like, you know, the only people that have guns are police and bad guys. So it's just, it's a weird cultural thing. Oh yeah, I mean, California specifically, man, like they're just. I don't understand what's going on in that state, and they think we're crazy in here in Florida. Like, what? People walk around with guns? That's crazy. Like, well, it's just it's the way it is. Just a different culture, but. I mean, I don't understand. Well, of course, there's the ammo thing, like that just happened in California. Like the guy from Poland. I don't. You probably didn't hear about this, but like in pretty much everywhere, I think there's some exceptions, like DC, like Washington D.C., the capital, and stuff like this. They passed a law: you cannot buy ammunition online. So, like, if I wanted to go online right now and buy 1,000 rounds of 9mm, I pay the money. It shows up in like 3 or 4 days. Big heavy box at the door. California, they decided they outlawed that, and then they put some stipulations like. You can't go to an adjacent state, buy it, and then drive it in. That's, I think, a felony. You can't, what were the other kind of weird things about it? I don't know. There was some other things that went along with that law. Like you can't loan guns to people unless it's an immediate family member. How do you define an immediate family member? Like I said, a lot of these gun laws don't make sense. They claim that they're to reduce violence and all this stuff. But, I mean, let's be realistic. None of this stuff works. Yeah, I mean, California, they passed that ammo law and they banned the 50 BMG, right? That you cannot own a gun in that caliber. It's outlawed in that state. I would love to see somebody cite like an actual crime where it was committed with a 50 BMG. Somebody walks in there with a 15 or 25-pound sniper rifle and commits a crime with it. Like, I just don't see it. Or an M2. I just don't see that happening. So again, these are just like baseless, rules and laws that they came up with that they say is like, oh yeah, this is to, help reduce murder and gun violence and stuff like that. But they're anti-gun laws. There's not a lot of logic behind it. I lost all my guns in a tragic boating accident. What? Tell us more about that. That is interesting. I mean, I'm sorry. That sounds terrible. I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, President Trump just tweeted out like the Second Amendment is never going away kind of thing. It's just, I don't really like getting political like this, but I mean, it's gotten ridiculous, It's like the left says like, nobody's trying to take your guns. And then there are some that will come out and say like, yes, I think the Second Amendment should be repealed. At least they're being honest about it. Like everybody else, like, no, we need to ban, all of these guns. Nobody needs these. Like, we did that with Prohibition. Nobody needs to get shit-faced. Nobody needs to drink, a fifth of vodka and be drunk. Right. But you have the right to do that. This is America. Like, if I want to eat 4 pounds of red meat a day and, die of a heart attack, I have that right. Like, yeah, nobody needs to eat that much red meat. But again, it's a right, not a need. It's really crazy, like how visible this thing has gotten now. I will say that when the Sandy Hook shooting happened and the NRA came out and said, the answer is to put armed guards at the school. Honestly, I thought that was a really stupid remark. I was like, God, that's the stupidest thing. Like, where did they come up with that? That sounds ridiculous. But then this time around, when, it got brought up again, somebody brought up a good point that kind of put it in perspective, where they were like, if you go into a government building or a jewelry store or a bank, like, there is an armed guard there because they're protecting what's valuable in those locations. If you apply that logic to it, it's really not any different. Like, okay, yeah, if we want to protect kids or the people that work there or whatever, you could have armed guards. Like, but for some reason, when there's like children involved, it's a whole different thing. Like, we didn't see this huge push with the Pulse thing when it was a bunch of adults that were killed. It's like, anytime it's kids, like, granted, I have a kid, like, I get it. But at the same time, like, if my child went to school and got shot, like, I wouldn't say we need gun control, right? Like, it's just crazy. Fort Worth cool guy. Yeah, I get you, man. Like, I don't know, man. I never really thought that they would kind of push something like that in, and they kind of just like snuck it in real quick. Like, I kind of heard about it. And they're like, oh yeah, they want to, do this, and this. But it's like before, anybody really even got to talking about it, like, they signed it in. So I don't know. Well, let's kind of change the subject. I don't want to really talk about that any longer. So let's talk about lights. So 1, 2, 3 different lights here. This is I just got this a little while ago. It was on sale, but this is the Streamlight. What is this called? The ProTac HLX, which is really, really bright. Like, let's see what this does. Yeah, I knew it was going to just white out the whole camera, right? So it's fairly light, but, it comes with the little mount on there, just a thumb screw type mount, goes on any Picatinny rail. I like having it like this in this setup because I'm left-handed. So if I'm holding the gun, I can just actuate the little, I don't like the tape switches. I like just to being able to tap it or, press it completely on. It's got the strobe feature, obviously, if you just click it real quick. So it's a good option. And I was thinking that I kind of wanted to get another one of those. We talked about the MP5 one. I showed it before, some of you guys that joined later, but this has got the tap switch here, and then it's also got these kind of tactile buttons. I will say, though, when I'm at the range and I use this and like I put it on the bench and then walk down range, like majority of the time I look back and I'm like, the light is on the gun again. I think it's really easy to actuate this when it's down. This one, let's see if it does it. It's not as, yeah, you see this one, it has a much smaller spill, so it's not whiting out the whole camera. If I get it right on there, it does. Good for indoors, though. That other one, I mean, yeah, you could use it indoors, but it's going to be pretty bright. Now, this one, actually, I think is my favorite setup. This is actually like a handgun light, right? Same one I have on, well, almost the same one I have on here, right? These Streamlights, I really like these Streamlights. I mean, the Surefire ones are good, but I just don't think they're worth as much money. But again, this is the same thing. Like, I'm going to have my hand right here while I'm using it. So it's real easy to just hit this lever, hit it this way to kind of just momentary on. There's the strobe. And then if you want it on all the time, you just flip it the other way. See? And that leaves it on. So I really like this setup. There were some comments there I'll look at in a second. Yes, it is a USC UMP conversion. Yeah, I agree. The Streamlights, I think they're the best bang for the buck. So I talked about the UMP or USC conversion. seems like you already know what it is. I kind of explained the short and dirty process of getting these converted, but again, this is on a Form 1 for the short barrel, and that's pretty much it. It's a fun gun to shoot. I talked about this earlier. Like, I like that the bolt holds back on the last round, and it's set up like an AR where it's just got the paddle on the side there. So I like that. But overall, the MP5 I feel is a better weapon. I mean, yeah, you don't get the knockdown power. I mean, of the 45, but it. I said I have shot this out to 100 yards. The trigger on it is really heavy. I would say it's probably like in the 15-pound range. It's got a good reset, so you can shoot it fast. But shooting at, like, I was shooting like steel target, this big, like a little IDPA one, and I could do it, but it took a lot. It took a lot out of me to get to concentrate, get that trigger pull on such a heavy trigger for 25 rounds. I mean, it was tough. MP5 is not that way. Like, it's got a. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like these kind of triggers, but it's more of like kind of an in between the UMP and the AR. It's a decent trigger. Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. I kind of talked about that. It's because of these weird gun laws, and it came from Germany. They have to butcher it and offer it as some nonsense. That's what I said. Like the USC itself, I got it kind of late in the game. I think I paid $1,500 for a USC. Granted, it was black. A lot of the earlier ones were gray, and then if you go through this process, somebody dyes it, and I don't like that because it never really matches. As well, it ends up kind of looking purple depending on who does the dye job. But check my batteries here. I mean, it's a fun gun. It does get some attention at the range. I was saying, like, I took it to an indoor range once, and like the younger kids knew what it was. I think from video games, they're like, oh, he's got a UMP 45. But if I took it to the outdoor range where there's guys shooting Remington 700s, older guys shooting the typical long range stuff, they were like, what is that gun? I mean, it looks cool. But yeah, that's what I said. As a USC, it was really not a lot of fun. At the time, though, when I bought that, I had never fired a rifle that was a pistol caliber. I mean, remember, I had the 16-inch barrel. It's like, you shoulder that, you got the long barrel out there. Mentally, I'm used to like the big boom from like, 5.56 or something like that. And then you pull the trigger and you're like, oh, Oh, B&T, nice. That's it's all steel, isn't it? Is the B&T all steel or is it polymer? Polymer lower, okay, aluminum upper, that's right, yeah. Yeah, no, B&T makes good stuff, man. They're really good at machining, and all their stuff's top notch. Monolithic upper, Yeah, I mean, oh, gosh, I will say some of these gun, like you can tell, like this specifically has a dated design because it's really a pain to clean. Like, you take the lower off, but then you can't, get to the barrel because it's all in here. Like, I don't know, it's just, there's no way to really get this barrel out. Like, there's a pin in there and it's welded. And then if you were to like kind of undo that, you have to have a press to press the barrel back in. And then if you don't do that, then the gun doesn't function right. Like, it's a real pain on these older, stamped steel type guns versus kind of the newer CNC machine stuff. Anybody can buy, some AR-15 components, put it together. But this gun specifically, no. The UMP, I took this barrel out a long time ago, like before I moved, and then it was, 8 months or something when I went to put it back in. And I actually forgot how hard it was to get the barrel back in here. You have to put it in, from the back here, and then there's an ejector that actually clamps onto the barrel there. So you have to make sure that that's all in line. And then once you get that all lined up, you have to take like, a dowel like this and basically just pound it in with a hammer. I'm using a US made barrel, which is part of the problem. I actually I was thinking I did something wrong, or there was some step I forgot. And then I went and looked online and found like a post on HK Pro that I myself had put in response to somebody saying that. And I said, yeah, mine was really hard to put in as well. Let's see. Anything else? I think we're getting kind of towards the end here. I'm running out of stuff to talk about. I talked about the Saiga 12. I talked about the Ruger Precision Rifle here. These two guys. Some of the handguns. The old Mark 23 here. I did this earlier for the latecomers, but if you've got a suppressor on this and you've got the slide locked back, it's actually a 19 inches we're talking here. So you figure that's longer than a typical AR barrel, or even an AR-10 barrel if you consider 18 a typical barrel length. Yeah, so I hadn't done the live stream before just because I wasn't sure I had enough subscribers. You look at some of these guys that have like, a couple 100,000 subscribers, and then you click on like, oh, there's 40 people. I'm like, okay, well, you got to have a couple 100,000 subscribers and then only 40 people show up. Like, I don't know if anybody would join, which I don't know. I think we got 6 people tops at one point. So yeah, I mean, it's something I can do in the future. This is just kind of I got the microphone and stuff set up, so I know how to do it now. And I've got a long cord on the camera, so I can actually take this thing around the room here and show different things. So that's cool. It's not the greatest camera, but this thing's pretty interesting. This little, Kinetic Art Metalworks. They make this metal thing to hold all the tool heads. It's kind of neat. Own any bump stocks? I talked about this, I think, right before I joined. I don't own any bump stocks. I don't have any of the braces or anything, right? I just do the Form 1s and just, do it that way because I don't ever want any questions about it. Then there's the whole, can you touch it to your shoulder? I don't want to deal with any of that. Pay the $200, you wait for the form to come back, and then, all is good. But the thing about the bump stocks that I didn't like is I remember when those first came out, and I was like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess it's kind of cool, but, I'm left-handed. So if I bought one, then like it would only work for me, assuming most people are right-handed. So I was like, how much use am I really going to get out of this? On top of that, it's not an accurate, it's inherently inaccurate, right? And at the end of the day, I said, man, I don't like this because some idiot's going to like shoot up a place with this, and then it's going to be a whole big deal and all this. And then, of course, we got like the binary triggers and all that kind of stuff. They actually do make one for the MP5, and it's really expensive, which I kind of was like, you know what? That I would probably get. Like, it would be really cool to shoot steel with a trigger like that in that particular weapon. Now, with the laws they passed in Florida, I think it'll technically be illegal to get one. So not a bump stock plan, or I just read your thing, not a bump stock fan. Same thing with the suppressors. There was the whole Hearing Protection Act, and people were like, oh, they're going to get off the NFA registry. and then, you don't have to worry about it. And I was thinking, yeah, I just don't see that happening. Like, the ATF makes a lot of money. Granted, it is peanuts compared to the alcohol and the tobacco, but I was like, yeah, I just don't see them giving up that revenue, and just letting anybody just walk in and buy a suppressor. Not that I think they should be regulated. Like, if you've shot suppressed before, it's not, everybody thinks it's like that Hollywood thing. Somebody's going to walk up behind somebody, no way. I tell people all the time, like, if I shot this inside, like, anybody that was around would know a gun just went off. Like, it is not, silent by any means. The bolt action 22, yeah, that's quiet until the bullet hits something. But I actually haven't done any NFA stuff since they changed the requirements. Now you have to do like the law enforcement notification, but you have to do the fingerprints and the picture. I'm not keen on that. It's debatable, right? Because you figure the FBI already has my fingerprints and picture because of the CWP. But yeah, I don't know. Me personally, I don't like to be in, I try to be in as little number of databases as possible, but that's a whole different topic. I had this discussion with somebody when we were talking about all this stuff. And I said, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that somewhere there's a room full of people and they're looking at these lists. And then, I go and buy some gunpowder online. And then he yells to the other guy, like, he just bought 8 pounds of gunpowder again. Like, this is a long-standing joke. We don't know what they're doing. Just, yeah, the wait time's reduced, man. All the forms as an individual, really. Mine are all on a trust. There's pros and cons to the different methods, but the wait times, yeah, like the Tyrant 45 was the first NFA deal I did. I don't remember what year that was. That was probably like, I don't know, probably 2011 maybe. And I think it was a, paper form. And I waited, I think, 7 months for that one. And then the, what is this? The Octane, I waited, I think this was the longest. I think this one was 10 months. Yeah, I think this one was 10 months. The SBRs, let's see. I think I did one of the ARs, and that was, roughly the same thing, 4 or 5 months. And then these Form 1s, I got really lucky. So I did those right when they opened the e-file. And I was expecting to wait, at least 3 months, right? And I put the paperwork through, and then I get an email one day, and I was like, what is this? Like atfonline.com, some weird address. And it was like, form is approved. And I was like, what? And it was no joke, like 29 days or something. So both of these guns, I got the Form 1 turned around in like 29 days. It was awesome. Wow, 40 fingerprint cards. Holy cow. Yeah, I just had to renew my my concealed weapons permit in Florida here, which I think they're good for 7 years. And I had moved a couple times since I got the original one. And somebody asked about it, and I looked at mine, and I was like, oh, wow, this is actually expiring next month. So I went to renew it. I figured it would be like your car registration. You just put like, the number in, your birthday, that kind of stuff. You pay the money. Well, it needed some control number or something that I didn't have, because I guess they would mail you a form and you needed that. So I had to change the address. Then I eventually got the thing, and I was like, okay, I have the control number now. So I went to do it, and it asked me, like, upload a new photo. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, if you have a driver's license in Florida, they'll let you use the same picture for like 10 plus years. I think it was like, I was like 30 when they finally made me take a new picture from when I was like 16 or something. So I thought that was interesting. Like, they want a current picture. So none of this stuff makes sense, guys. Like, very little makes sense. These weird gun laws and requirements that we have to jump through. 21 registered. Wow. Yeah, no, I got good with it. Let's see, what do I have? I have, I think 5 suppressors and 1, 2, 3, 4 SBRs. Wow, so 21. So that's you've spent some money there. 21. What's $200? $4,200 in tax stamps. I will say what's interesting about the NFA stuff is I think when I got the first one in like 2011 or something like that, they weren't legal to hunt with at that time. And then once they changed that law, now every time I go to like Silencer Shop or something, there's like 4 new companies that make suppressors now. There used to be, a handful of them like Gemtech, Silencer, what was it? Who makes this? I'm blanking here. Oh, yeah, Advanced Armament, Gemtech, Knights Armament. There was really only like maybe 10 people that made suppressors. Now there's like 30 or 40 of them. Waiting on 6 more, 3 SPRs. Yeah, I do want, I wish I had done, somebody was selling, the receivers. They were selling like just the MP5 receivers. And I debated buying one of those and registering it, and then at some point later getting, the trigger pack and all that stuff. And I didn't do it. I don't know. I'm sure at some point I'll get more stuff, but let's see. 5 suppressors took an average 6 to 8 months. Yeah, that sounds about right. 2 SPRs on e-file. Yeah, that was awesome. And then they fucked the system up or something and shut it down, and then there was, you were back to waiting a long time. So I don't know. It was cool that I got in while it was good. But at some point, like, if any of you guys want to get into like the NFA stuff, it's like the first 1 or 2 purchases are the hardest, because like this AAC can, like, I paid retail for this thing. It was like $800. So you fork over the $800, and then you send in the $200 and stuff. So you're out like $900 with nothing to show for, right? The thing's sitting in a safe at the, wherever you bought it. And you're like, God. And it's about the time that you actually forget about it. Like you're thinking about it every day, like, and I'm going to call and check on the status, see if they cash the check. You get into this whole thing. And then, about the time, like, I think I was on a cruise and I came back, turned my phone on, and I had, a bunch of messages and stuff. And I was like, oh, my suppressor's ready. I was like, we got to go. So it's one of those things. But now it's like, I got enough NFA toys to play with. If I bought, a new suppressor, registered a new Form 1 lower, it's not a big deal for me to wait. Actually, a friend of mine got, gosh, it's been a while now. He finally bought one, like one of those modular ones. Actually, I have a funny story that you'll enjoy about suppressors, but it's been a while. Let me ask him, see if he responds when you get your suppressor. So I have a friend that. You get your suppressor. Was actually the guy that got me into guns when I was in college. That let's see, I think I did it first. I was telling him, like, I'm gonna get, a suppressor or something. He's like, yeah, that'd be cool. So I got one, and then he got one. He's got a couple of them, but he's a pilot. Like, he's an airline pilot, and he flies with guns all the time. Like when he goes places, he'll bring AKs and whatever. He just checks them and whatever. Well, he was going somewhere, and he was bringing a suppressor, and he filed whatever it is, that stupid paperwork that you have to file to bring it, between states and all that. And so he did all that, and then he decided to keep it in his carry-on because I guess he didn't want to leave it checked with the actual gun, because if it got lost or stolen or whatever, it's a big pain in the ass. So he decided to keep it in his carry-on. and he's traveling with his family. So he said, he goes through, of course they scan the bag and they're looking at it in the little x-ray thing. And they're like, you got something in here. And he's like, oh, it's probably my rangefinder. And they're like, no, it's something else. And he's like, well, it could be my suppressor. And they're like, what do you mean? What is that? And he's like, oh, it's for my rifle. And he's like, as soon as I said the word rifle, like, they pressed a button, like this light started flashing. All these people started coming. They're like, okay, you got to go over to this counter. And he said it was like this whole big deal. And he's like, they acted like, I had like a bomb or something. He's like, there was a lady that had gloves on and was holding it like this. And said, I heard him saying like, oh, they ran me through NICS and nothing came back and all this stuff. And so he had to take his flight, he was going to miss the flight. And so they confiscated it basically. So he sends me a text like, oh, TSA just confiscated my suppressor. And I was like, oh, so you gotta be kidding. So I call him and he tells me the story. And then he's like, yeah, I'm going to have to figure out what to do. He's like, I don't know if I should call the ATF and tell them like, it's not in my possession anymore. I'm like, yeah, I think you're probably supposed to do that, but who knows? So I don't know. I think they ended up calling him the next day or something. Make a long story short, he went there, had to meet with somebody, who's like some high up in the TSA at that location or something like that. Turns out that guy actually was into the stuff and had suppressors and stuff. And he's like, look, we're going to give it back to you. We don't always do that. They classified that as the same as having an unloaded firearm in your luggage. That's what they said it was the equivalent of. And so he got it back, but he had to sign something that said if he did it again, it was something strange. Like if he did it again within a 10-year period, then he would receive I think he said a $42,000 fine. It was something really specific and really, really odd. Let's see what we got here. This is that. Five suppressor. Yeah, $800. Yeah, hell a long way. I mean, yeah, they are technically. I mean, they are kind of investments from the sense that you can't really wear these out. I mean, especially the pistol ones. Like if you shoot the baffles out, like you can send it back. They'll give you new baffles, or even if you have to pay for it. It's one of those things. They last almost forever. Yeah, that's a good point. Like I wouldn't be surprised if stuff like this continues, and which I don't see why it would. We're talking about crazy people here. We're not talking about guns themselves, right? So yeah, I mean, if there's an uptick in stuff where like the NFA stuff starts being used, which I mean anything can happen, I guess. I mean, yeah, right. I could see them pushing for that. Like, oh yeah, okay, you can buy a silencer, but it's got to be one produced before X. Yeah, 5220.20. Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I don't think you have to do it with, let's see. Do you have to do it with suppressors and SBRs? I thought there was one thing you could do without the form. Okay, not that. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, no, seriously. I was like, man, I was like, so I kind of, every once in a while, I'll tell people that, like, gun people, and I'm like, what an idiot. And I was like, I mean, yeah, it was kind of stupid, but at the same time, like, I see his logic behind it, right? Like, this by itself is no more dangerous than, this wrench. Like, these two are exactly the same thing. I could pack this in my suitcase and I think I'd be fine. So, but again, with all of this stuff, you got to throw logic out the window. These are the people making these decisions are not thinking that way. Let's see. Anything else that we want to cover here? I'm trying to think if there's anything. Oh, here's the Sega mag. I think this is a 10 round. I don't know. There's an 8 marked on it. Is it only 8 rounds? It seems awfully big for only 8 rounds in comparison to, where's that? Like just a typical PMag. I don't know. Like I said before, I'm not really a big shotgun guy. The Sega doesn't get used much. It's not even a gun that people like shooting, right? If I take some people shooting, like, hey, you want to shoot the Sega? And they're like, well, you shoot it first. And then they see me shoot it, and they're like, yeah, no thanks. I'm like, yeah, I don't really blame you. Some people are shotgun people. I'm not. You watch what's going on in the U.S.? Some civil movement and some. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's hard to know what's going to happen with the YouTube stuff. I talked about this when the stream started. Like, you know, probably half the stuff on my channel is reloading stuff, right? So, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I went in and looked at all the videos that they demonetized, and it didn't make a lot of sense. Like, you know, I have one video that has suppressor content, and the other one does. You know, they both have it, and one's demonetized and one's not. Like, I don't know kind of what process they have for that, but yeah, it's sad, man, because like especially the reloading stuff, like all this, the majority of the stuff that I know about reloading is stuff that I watched somebody else do. Like, yeah, you learn stuff as you screw around with the stuff. You know, you're always going to learn that way. But for somebody that, you know, doesn't know much about it or wants to get in it, like there's a value there in being able to see this stuff. You know, I'm interested. I think that, and I heard this, I don't know that this is true, but supposedly gun content is about 10% of YouTube's videos. So, I mean, that's a good chunk, but it's like, let's say that they put the kibosh on it and like, we can't have any gun stuff, or, you know, very little at least. Like, if there's that big of a market for it, somebody will come along. Like, there's been talk of Pornhub, right? And I said, porn and guns, what else is there in life, right? So, and people laughed about it, but at the same time, like, Pornhub has an infrastructure that could technically support it, you know, short of somebody like Apple or Amazon or something releasing their own platform, stuff like that. Like the amount of money, and I work in this industry, like the amount of time, money that it costs to produce an infrastructure for that kind of stuff is just, it's not something where like the full 30 thing, right? Like they only have a handful of guys putting content on there because, you know, they can't open it up to anybody and everybody because they just can't support the infrastructure, right? So the cost is too great there. They're not taking in enough money to kind of play the game that YouTube is playing. So, but I do think like Pornhub specifically could take their infrastructure, right? Like they have the physical servers and all that. They have the software and back end to produce the same product as YouTube in the sense that people can upload videos, comment, and stuff like that. So if they could make like a sanitized version of that, where obviously it's not going to have, you know, banner ads with girls, you know, shaking their asses and stuff. If they could do that, probably change the domain, you know, pick a separate domain that's something else, GunTube or whatever. I don't know. But that's a viable option. And I think that if YouTube gets to that point where they just, you know, end up putting the kibosh on this, somebody will step in and try and, you know, fulfill that need there. So I asked my friend, when are you getting your suppressor? He goes, who knows? The government is more focused on kicking people out of the country versus processing suppressor applications. It's funny because he's actually Iranian, and we've gone shooting before, and he's got like this huge SUV, like one of those Infinity big, huge things. And we were on the way back from the range, right? So we had the whole thing, the back's loaded with Pelican cases. And I don't know, we've got, you know, probably 15 guns in the back, steel targets, all this kind of stuff. And he goes blowing past like a trooper running radar. And I was like, how fast are you going? And he's like, fast. I said, great, that's all we need. He's going to pull over and come up and be like, yeah, we got two Middle Eastern guys in a car full of guns. Like, let's see. Nobody talks about this. Yeah. In range, going to point. Yeah, I did hear that actually. Yeah, I mean, I'll do another one, guys, if you want. We can. You can even send me some ideas, stuff you want to see or whatever. I just kind of wanted to do this. If they put the kibosh on it, or just to see who would show up. All right, guys. I'm going to shut it down if anybody has any other questions. I talked about the giveaway. Nobody was really interested in the stuff I was trying to give away, but the best way to probably contact me is through just firearmtutorials.com. Just go on the site there. There's a contact thing. It'll come straight to my email, and I always reply to them. Yeah, man. Thanks for joining. Question for you: What is, if you know this, what kind of rifles do the Polish army use? It's kind of interesting to see some of these foreign armies and what arms they choose to carry. I need to figure out why it's so washed out. See, my hand is like almost completely white there. I think it might be a setting on my webcam. And then we started to use MS. Oh, wow, I haven't even heard of those. I thought you were going to say like Steyr or, HK or looks like an ACR. Yeah, the ACR is a gun like I've looked at several times, seriously wanting to buy it. Like, okay, I'm going to buy an ACR. I'm going to buy an ACR. And every time I end up going through the same process. I don't know why. I kind of second guess myself, but it ends up saying like, okay, the barrel profile is too heavy. The trigger, is probably not good. I'm going to want to swap it out, something like that. And at the end of the day, it ends up being like, a really expensive gun that's doing the same thing as the other ones I have. So if it was cheaper, that'd be a different story. All right, guys, I'm going to shut it down. So thanks for watching. I will, I can do these more often. Like I said, I hang out in here, All right, guys. Peace.